There are plans to build 2,300 wind turbines across the Midlands to supply electricity to Britain. Now, public meetings are taking place in the Midlands. There was one in the County Laois village of Ballyroan last night, which called for a moratorium on government proposals to locate these wind turbines in the 5 Midland counties until a proper environmental assessment has taken place. We'll be hearing from the Minister for Energy, Pat Rabbitte, in a few moments. But first, let's talk to Andrew Duncan of the Lakelands Windfarm Information Group. Hello to you, Andrew.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Very good. Now, what is your problem with the idea of constructing these wind farms, given that there's probably going to be loads of jobs involved in them?
I suppose we probably have the same problem as the English people who don't want them built over there. And bear in mind that this development is to supply the UK grid. It's not to supply the Irish grid. So we have a similar problem. We don't particularly want to see wind turbines constructed too close to people's homes. That moratorium you referred to there, I think what people are actually looking for is a moratorium on construction until after the technical guidelines, which are undergoing at the moment, are published. I suppose from our point of view, you know, there isn't much point in watching the horse bolt to stable and do something about it afterwards. If you were serious about protecting people, you must protect them and bring in a moratorium before the damage is done.
But what is your problem with these wind turbines?
In relation, well, the problem, I suppose, the first problem from my background is as a property valuer and auctioneer. If you build a 600-foot turbine 500 metres from someone's home, which is allowable under the current set of guidelines, you will completely devalue the property. And there are ongoing problems in relation to noise, flicker, which the government are cognizant of. They know that those issues are there, and they're working on guidelines to try and rectify those issues at the moment. But the problem that we see is that there isn't any point in bringing in guidelines and allowing planning permissions to continue on unabated while that process is ongoing. There must be a moratorium in place while that process is undergoing.
Are there any health concerns in relation to these wind turbines that has any substantial basis to them?
There's Professor Alan Evans. He's an eminent professor in Queen's University, has published several papers. He had one in the British Medical Journal. He's actually coming to speak at a meeting in Mullingar on Thursday night for Lakelands Windfarm Information Group, and he's one of the foremost sleep specialists in the world, and he said that there are very much definite problems in relation to noise, particularly in relation to infrasound, which is not measured as part of the process used by the developers at the moment.
What's infrasound?
Infrasound is low-frequency noise. It's something that's very difficult for people to comprehend, but it is measurable. It's something, we're told, that is used by some of the armed forces as a method of torture.
But there are wind farms all over the country, and you don't hear many complaints from people who live near the existing ones.
I think you do. I think the problem is that the voice hasn't been heard until now. This problem has been ongoing for several years. There are lots of people giving out about them. I suppose if you look at the scale and size of what's proposed for here, it's at a completely different level than has gone on up to now. Under the previous set of guidelines, the 2006 guidelines, turbine heights were probably 50 to 60 metres, and they were allowed 500 metres from people's homes. These turbines are 180, 190 metres. So I suppose you have to take cognizance of the fact that they're getting bigger and larger, and that is probably, you know, this has been highlighted by the scale and size of this. That's not to say that people haven't been given out. They have. There's lots of people who are very unhappy with wind farms close to their homes.
Okay, just before I turn to the Minister, I'm going to read you a comment from a listener. Bloody NIMBYs, arguing against electricity for the British. Sure, aren't most of the fields full of cattle for the British market?
The problem is that this market is for Britain, who don't want them over there. These turbines were planned for Britain. So while there's nothing wrong with being a NIMBY when you're trying to protect your family and your home, bear in mind, again, that this was planned for Britain. They don't want them over there. The British Energy Minister said recently that we can't continue imposing these on our communities. We must protect our green and pleasant land.
Minister for Energy, Pat Rabbitte, why are we allowing these things to be built in Ireland if the British don't want them on their land, but are happy for us to build them and then take our electricity?
Well, there are arguments, Matt, why we have to proceed with considerable sensitivity when we're dealing with the rights of local communities and householders, but one of them is not because we're doing business with the Brits. I mean, that's a ridiculous argument. We're not helping the British grid or helping the British energy need. We're selling something. We're trading something to Britain. And there's no difference from us trading this. It's an indigenous renewable resource and trading beef. There's no difference. I mean, there are arguments, questions that need to be had, and I was in Donegal yesterday speaking to the British Irish Parliament organisation, and we had a very good debate on this, and I would welcome a thorough public debate on it, but not with arguments that I have read in some commentary on it about this is to the advantage of the Brits, and we're going to have wind turbines at every crossroads in Ireland. I mean, that's complete irrelevant exaggeration.
Aidan in Galway says, I was at a local West meeting here in Galway last week. The plans are to build hundreds of 120-metre high turbines close to homes, the size of the Dublin Spire. They spoil the views, they are noisy, they create flicker shadows on bright days, put them where there are little or no houses. Not to mention the hundreds of trucks passing through small villages for 10 months to build them, he says. What do you think of that, Minister?
Well, I mean, I'd like to stick with what, has happened in my watch and for what I'm responsible for, which is that we are trying to initiate an export trade of renewable energy to the neighbouring island. There is an EU directive that envisages us getting to the stage where 2 or more countries can trade renewable energy, and where one or other country, if they meet certain conditions, can use that import in order to help meet their own mandatory renewable targets. Those renewable targets are designed to build up a renewable capacity in Europe, to shift away from fossil fuels, to try and decarbonise the system as well as we can, to have regard to climate change considerations and all the rest. That's the thrust of the policy. And insofar as I'm involved, and I hadn't seen any application yet, I don't know about the height of any turbine yet. What I do know is that, for example, we have a couple of 100,000 acres of cutaway bog in the Midlands. We have a company called Bord na Móna that's running out of mission because turf is a finite resource. And this has the capacity to give Bord na Móna a whole new mission, a whole new existence, maintain employment in a region that's very badly affected in terms of unemployment, and at the same time generate wealth for this economy. And if in the process it manages to assist the neighbouring island in terms of meeting its energy targets, well, then that's a win-win for both countries. And taking up a little Irelander approach, has got nothing to do with this.
Okay, but what about the health concerns, the environmental concerns, and the impact on property prices?
All of these matters would have to be gone into in very considerable detail in order to comply with our planning regulations. The environmental impact statement that would be necessary, is very rigorous and very thorough. So, I don't have any doubt but that the most rigorous assessment that these projects, when they emerge, and whatever scale they are, and whatever height they are, will be subjected to the most rigorous assessment.
Well, finally, why not build them offshore rather than building them on land?
Offshore is more expensive, Matt. What we're doing here in this circumstance, if we can bring it about, is to exploit an indigenous resource that is renewable, trade that with the neighbouring island, using the British supports systems. The feed-in tariff, as it's called, will be used here, is not the Irish one, or one funded by the Irish taxpayer. It's one funded by the British taxpayer under their what used to be known as the ROC system, and now they're changing it to a CFD's type arrangement. So they're supporting it, and I've now forgot the question you asked me.
I have myself. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Minister for Energy Pat Rabbitte and Andrew Duncan of the Lakelands Windfarm Information Group. We'll be back to discuss motoring after the traffic with Laura Holland.